We think we know this garden. The image sits inside us like something we were born with, a perfect green world, light filtering through leaves that have never known decay, rivers that have never run dry. The first man, Adam, breathing air that still feels new. We imagine him walking alone, the soft thud of his footsteps, the only human sound in a world of bird song and running water. Animals move around him without fear. He names them, one by one, a lion, a dove, a serpent. Each creature receives a word and the world feels orderly. We picture the deep sleep, the stillness, the hand of God reaching into his side, the removal of a rib, the shaping of a second human, a woman drawn from his very body, a companion, the missing half that makes him whole, Eve, the mother of all living. This is the version carved into stained glass and pressed into children's Bibles. It is clean, it is simple, it feels finished. But if we slow down, if we read those first pages of Genesis as if we have never seen them before, something strange appears. In the very first chapter, the text speaks with a cosmic, almost mathematical voice. It tells of creation in measured days, of light and darkness separated, of seas and land divided, of stars hung in the sky like lanterns. Then, in a single sweeping line, it says, "So God created mankind in his own image. Male and female he created them. Together. At the same time. A pair." And then, in the very next chapter, we are invited to watch it all begin again. The man is formed first. He is alone. There is no woman yet. He walks through the garden surrounded by life, and still, something is missing. If the first chapter says humanity, male and female, is created together, why does the second chapter show a lonely Adam and a woman who only appears later formed from his side? For most readers, this is just a poetic retelling, two angles on the same event. But for some ancient interpreters, that gap, that repeat, was not just a stylistic choice. It was a crack in the story, a crack wide enough for another figure to slip through. A first woman created alongside Adam, equal in origin, equal in breadth. A woman whose story did not survive in the official telling, but reappeared in whispers, in amulets, in myths, and in the margins of old texts. In those whispers, she has a name, Lilith. Who was she? Why did some traditions call her the first wife of Adam? And why did her story have to be buried so deeply that she survives mainly as a shadow, a nightmare, a demon? To find her, we have to leave the neat garden and walk into older, darker terrain. We start where almost every Bible begins. Genesis. Genesis 1 feels like standing at a distance watching the universe come into focus. The language is grand, almost ceremonial. Light is separated from darkness. Waters are divided. The text counts days the way a careful scribe counts lines. Then suddenly humanity arrives. Not a man alone, but humanity is a pair. Male and female, he created them. The first chapter does not explain the mechanics. It simply presents a completed image. Two humans, one act. For centuries, many Jewish commentators treated this as more than poetic shorthand. Some read this line and imagined a first human formed with both masculine and feminine aspects. Others imagined two beings created together, side by side, a balanced pair. Later, when they turned the page to chapter 2, they saw something that did not line up. Now Adam stands alone in the garden. Time passes. Animals are formed. None are suitable. The text says there was no helper fit for him. Only then is the woman shaped from his side. For most modern readers, this is not a problem. Ancient storytelling is not concerned with strict chronology. But some ancient minds could not let the discrepancy go. They asked a simple but unsettling question. If Genesis 1 shows male and female created together, who was that first woman? One line of interpretation appearing in later Jewish tradition suggests a bold answer. The first woman of Genesis 1 is not Eve. She is someone else, someone whose story did not fit comfortably with the world that followed. In this reading, chapter 2 becomes something more than a second angle. It becomes a revision, a smoothing over. A new version of the beginning written after an earlier story became too difficult, too disruptive to keep in full view. If that is even partly true, then the Garden of Eden, as we usually imagine it, is already a second draft, and the faint silhouette of that earlier woman stands behind the text like a ghost behind frosted glass. To see her more clearly, we have to go back even further. Back beyond Eden, beyond Jerusalem, beyond the neat lines of canon, into a world of clay, river mud, and night spirits. We travel east, into the cradle of cities. We drift over the twin rivers of the Tigris and the Euphrates at dusk. The air is heavy with dust and the smell of wood smoke. Along the banks, cities of baked brick cling to the water. Babylon, Nineveh. Columns of smoke rise from temple courts. Oil lamps flicker behind reed mats. In this world, the night is not empty. It has a personality, a texture, a temperature. It sighs through reeds. It rattles wooden shutters. It carries the cries of animals and the distant echo of drums. For the people who lived here, darkness was not just the absence of light. It was a domain populated by presences. They spoke of storm spirits that rode the wind, of beings that slipped through cracks in walls, of shapes that pressed on the chest of a sleeping person and stole their breath, of forces that brought fever to children and strange thoughts to adults. To make sense of these fears, they gave them names. Among the names scratched into clay tablets, one cluster stands out: Lilu, Lilatu, Lili. In the Akkadian language, these words referred broadly to night spirits, restless, often dangerous presences associated with the desert wind and with illness. Over time, one feminine form, Lilitu, began to take on a more distinct shape in some texts and images. A powerful female figure, winged, sometimes bird-footed, standing between the worlds of human and something else. In certain reliefs, later readers would look at this figure, a woman with wings, flanked by owls standing over lions, and wonder if they were seeing an early echo of someone they already knew by a different name: Lilith. Modern scholars debate that connection. Some see continuity. Others caution against drawing a straight line from Mesopotamian spirits to later Jewish folklore. But the family resemblance is hard to ignore. What matters for our journey is this: long before anyone spoke of Adam's first wife, there was already a tradition of a female night presence, a being associated with winds, with desolate places, with vulnerable bodies at the edge of sleep. She was not yet a wife, not yet part of a family tree. She was a shadow, a way to explain what terrified people when the sun went down and the lamp burned low. So how does a night spirit from Mesopotamia end up standing beside Adam in a Jewish story written centuries later? The answer lies in a small, strange text that appears much later in history, a text that cracks open the neat image of Eden and rewrites the beginning as a conflict. Many centuries after Genesis, a curious, somewhat mischievous text began to circulate in Jewish circles. Today it is known as the Alphabet of Ben Sira. It is not scripture. It reads more like a blend of midrash, satire, folklore, and moral tale. Hidden inside it is one of the most unsettling retellings of the Eden story ever written. According to this text, when God decides to create the first humans, he shapes them both from the same ground. Adam and a woman are formed from the dust together, no rib, no secondary act. They rise from the earth as equals. In this telling, the problem in the garden is not Adam's solitude, it is something else, something more intimate, a question of position, of power. The text describes a conflict between the two humans when they lie together. Adam insists on taking the higher place. He claims it as his right, his role. The woman, this first wife, looks at him and sees no reason for such a hierarchy. They were, after all, shaped from the same soil. There is no mention of rib, no hint that one owes their existence to the other. She refuses to accept the posture he demands. The text does not present this as a gentle disagreement. It is a collision of two visions of what it means to be human. One demands that the woman take her place beneath. The other insists they were made as equals. When the conflict cannot be resolved, the woman takes a step that marks her forever. According to the alphabet of Ben Sira, she speaks the ineffable name of God, a name that in Jewish tradition is too holy to be uttered lightly. In doing so, she takes hold of a power that is not meant to be wielded casually. Empowered by that name, she rises and leaves the garden. She does not sneak through the bushes or slink away in shame. The story pictures her ascending, moving beyond the boundaries of Eden and flying toward the sea. The place she chooses is the edge of the world as the ancient imagination conceived it. The region of the Red Sea, the chaotic border where land dissolves into deep, restless water. In the ancient mind, seas are not just physical locations. They are symbols of danger, chaos, and the unknown. The Red Sea, with its swirling currents, became a fitting exile for a woman who refused the order of Eden. For a moment, the story pauses there. A human who would not accept second place, standing on the shore of a sea that represents the boundary between order and chaos. A woman who used the divine name not to curse, but to leave. But the tale does not end with her departure. According to the alphabet of Ben Sira, the heavens do not remain indifferent to this act. God in this story sends three angelic beings, often named Senyoi, Sansanoi, and Semangalof, to bring the woman back. The text pictures them as radiant figures, messengers of divine authority tasked with restoring the proper order of the garden. Their mission is simple: convince her to return to Adam and resume the role she abandoned. The angels find her near the sea. They deliver the message: return to your husband, accept your place, or face the consequences. In this tradition, the consequences are described in terrifying terms. If she refuses to go back, 100 of her children born from her union with destructive spirits will die every day. This is mythic language, not biology. It paints a picture of a woman whose offspring populate the realm of nightmares and sudden infant deaths, a way to personify the fragility of life in a world with high mortality. The woman does not yield. In the alphabet, she refuses to return to Eden on those terms. The story does not soften this moment. There is no negotiation, no compromise. She will not go back to a life lived beneath. The result is a terrible bargain. According to the text, the angels return with a kind of uneasy agreement. Her children will die in great numbers day after day, but she will maintain a limited protection over human infants in certain conditions. In many versions, the amulets that mothers hung over cradles inscribed with the names of those three angels are said to mark a child as off-limits. Any infant protected by such a charm is, in theory, safe from her. It is a cruel arrangement, and it reflects the fears of the communities that told it. Infant death was a painful, common reality. Naming a figure like Lilith as responsible was a way to give shape to a grief that otherwise felt senseless and random. In this story, the former wife of Adam becomes something else: a queen of the night, a mother of demons, a predator who haunts the edges of human life. She is no longer a partner in a garden. She is a warning. The same narrative that once framed her refusal as an act of equality now reframes her body as monstrous and her fertility as a curse. The story has been turned inside out. Yet beneath the layers of horror, the core remains. According to this medieval text, the first no in human history is spoken by a woman who will not live beneath a man who claims superiority by default. The first fracture in paradise in this version is not a bite of forbidden fruit. It is a refusal to accept a lower place. After the woman leaves, the Garden of Eden is quiet again. In the official canon, the reader never sees this earlier story. The text moves calmly from Adam's loneliness to God's solution. It is not good for the man to be alone. Animals appear. None are suitable. A deep sleep falls over Adam. God takes a piece of his side and builds a woman from it. In Genesis, when Adam wakes and sees this woman, he speaks words that many traditions cherish. "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." The narrator presents her as a gift, a counterpart, someone who belongs so closely to him that he recognizes himself in her. Her name will be Eve, the mother of all living. According to later readers who knew the Lilith tradition, this moment does more than introduce a new character. It repairs a narrative problem. The first woman, formed from the same dust as Adam, could claim equality. She could say, "We are made from the same substance. Why should I lie beneath you?" But a woman formed from his side can be framed differently. She is a part of him, not an independent creation. Her origin story makes hierarchy easier to justify. From that perspective, Eve becomes a safer answer to the problem of Lilith. Where Lilith is imagined in later lore as questioning, resisting, departing, Eve is presented, at least at first, as receptive, responsive, joined to Adam's fate. She is given an origin that binds her to him in a way that the first woman never was. In this reading, Genesis 2 is not simply a second telling. It is a carefully crafted response, a redesigned beginning in which the rebellious wife has been removed and a more cooperative figure has taken her place. Whether or not one accepts that interpretation, the contrast between the two traditions is striking. In one, a woman who insists on equality becomes a demon of the night. In the other, a woman who enters later, derived from the man, becomes the archetype of all motherhood. Two different stories, two different ways of drawing the female half of humanity. Once the story of Adam's first wife appears in the alphabet of Ben Sira, it does not stay there. It seeps outward, coloring other traditions. In medieval Jewish folklore, Lilith becomes a figure associated with danger around childbirth and early infancy. According to these beliefs, she lurks in bedrooms, in thresholds, in liminal spaces where new life is fragile, and the boundary between this world and the unseen feels thin. Mothers, terrified of losing babies to sudden illness and unexplained death, turn to symbols of protection. Archaeologists have found small clay plaques and metal amulets inscribed with formulas naming the three angels from the Lilith story. These charms were sometimes hung near cradles or worn by pregnant women. The logic is simple and haunting. According to the tradition, if Lilith sees the names of the angels who once confronted her, she must pass by. The amulet becomes a kind of contract pinned over sleeping heads. This child is marked, watched, not yours to take. In some versions, Lilith also becomes a seducer of men at night, a presence blamed for illicit dreams and forbidden desires. She stands at the crossroads of sexuality, death, and fear. For communities with strict sexual norms, she becomes a convenient personification of impulses that do not fit the rules. The image of the first wife of Adam continues to fracture. She is now demon, seductress, child killer, queen of an unseen brood. The more terrifying the fears, the more monstrous she becomes. And yet behind these stories, we can still see traces of something older. The night winds of Mesopotamia, the desert spirits, the anxiety of parents in a world without antibiotics, the terror of blood and fever in a dimly lit room. Lilith becomes a mirror for everything that threatens the fragile structures of family and order. Her name is whispered not as a theology, but as a coping mechanism. When something goes wrong in the dark, it is easier to imagine a figure responsible than to sit with the silence of randomness. In the last century, another transformation has taken place. As modern readers rediscovered the alphabet of Ben Sira and other references to Lilith, they began to look at her differently. Instead of seeing only a demon, some writers, artists, and activists saw a symbol. According to this newer reading, Lilith is not primarily a monster, but a representation of female resistance, especially resistance to unjust hierarchy. Her refusal to accept a position beneath Adam becomes, in this lens, the first protest against a patriarchal order. Feminist theologians and scholars point out that she is punished not for violence or cruelty, but for insisting on equality of origin and dignity. The later traditions that cast her as a baby killer and seducer, they argue, reflect a deep cultural fear of women who do not stay in assigned roles. In this view, the demonization of Lilith becomes a window into the anxieties of the societies that told her story. A woman who says no to male dominance is recast as a danger to children, to men, to the very structure of the home. At the same time, not everyone is comfortable with this rehabilitation. Many religious communities continue to view the Lilith material, where they know it at all, as folklore at best and poisonous at worst. For them, she is a stitched-together figure made from scraps of myth, not a historical person or a figure to be admired. Modern scholars, too, urge caution. They remind us that Lilith, as we know her, is a composite, part Mesopotamian spirit, part medieval imagination, part modern projection. She is anchored in texts, but those texts are late, complex, and often playful or satirical. Still, the fact remains, the story of a woman who leaves Eden rather than live beneath a man has returned with surprising force. Her image shows up in novels, art, music videos, occult literature, comics, and academic essays. She walks onto stages and into screens as everything from villain to anti-hero to martyr. According to one line of interpretation, this resurgence says as much about us as it does about ancient lore. In a world wrestling with questions of gender, power, consent, and equality, the figure of a woman who refuses a demanded position feels unsettlingly contemporary. Whether one embraces her as a symbol or rejects her as a distortion, Lilith refuses to stay buried. So what do we do with a story like this? We have, on one side, the official narrative of Genesis: Adam, Eve, the serpent, the fruit, the fall. A story that has shaped theology, art, and imagination for millennia. On the other side, we have a cluster of later texts and traditions, some serious, some playful, some fearful, that speak of another woman. According to these later sources, the first fracture of paradise is not a stolen bite. It is a refusal to accept a lower place. According to Genesis, the first exile from Eden is the result of disobedience to a divine command about a tree. According to the alphabet of Ben Sira, the first exile is the result of a woman walking away from a man who insists on dominance. Both stories are, in their own ways, about boundaries crossed and consequences suffered. Both are about the cost of saying no to an order that claims to be the only way things can be. We do not have to choose one and throw the other away to feel the weight of this. We can let them sit side by side and ask what they reveal. The official canon shows us how a tradition wanted to see itself in ordered sequence, with clear roles and a coherent fall. The forbidden story shows us what happens when a culture's unspoken tensions and fears leak into the open. Lilith as a figure is difficult, contradictory, and often disturbing. She is at once a night spirit from Mesopotamia, a legendary first wife of Adam in a medieval text, a demon blamed for infant deaths, and a modern emblem of resistance. Perhaps that difficulty is the point. Some stories survive precisely because they do not fit neatly. They survive in the cracks, in the whispers, in the amulets hidden under mattresses, in the jokes and warnings and half-remembered tales told at the edge of sleep. If we listen closely, they do not simply tell us about what people believed about the unseen world. They tell us what people feared, what they longed for, what they could not say directly in the official versions. The story of Lilith is one of those. It does not ask us to rewrite the Bible. It does not demand that we accept every later legend as fact. It simply invites us to stand at the edge of the garden and notice something we were not taught to see. A missing woman, an erased possibility, a first no echoing beneath the story we thought was complete. And once we have noticed her shape standing there, part shadow, part mirror, part question, it becomes very hard to unsee her. We might find ourselves wondering every time we hear the familiar story of Adam and Eve. What else is hiding in the margins just beyond the edge of the page? What other names were whispered long after the ink dried? And what does it mean for us that some of the most unsettling questions about power, equality, and freedom were already being asked? Not in modern debates, not in academic papers, but in the form of a woman who refused to lie down and quietly disappeared into the dark. The garden, it turns out, may be more crowded than we were told,